Welcome into Rounding the Bases.
Round the bases. Everybody knows Joe Goldberg. It's around the bases. Everybody knows Joe Goldberg.
Welcome into another episode of Rounding the Bases, presented by Community America Credit Union, invested in you. A shout out, as always, to my friends at Chief of Staff Kansas City. Whether you're in KC, around the country, if you're looking for a job, looking to hire someone, looking for a great resource in an office with good people and culture, check them out, chiefofstaffkc.com. Making connections that matter. My connections today run deep. They've been going for a number of years. So we have familiar voices and trusted perspectives as we welcome back Encore contributors for the 4th annual Black History Month panel. Joining us from Boston is Chandra Clark, president of the Corey C. Griffin Foundation and a strategic leader of change. She multiplies impact through purpose and generosity, a mindset that has guided her distinguished 20-year career. And sometimes my other guests and I like to say, she's just keeping us in line and babysitting us. That other guest, he doesn't really need babysitting. My good friend, Andre Davis, he is a philanthropist, a speaker, a visionary, emergent thinker, servant leader, coach, and just an all-around good guy, and a good-looking guy for that matter as well. I told him I'd add some more into there. He's known for innovative thinking and expansive leadership. Andre consistently shows how opportunity grows when we invest in people, ideas, and community. Today's conversation centers on abundance and alignment. We don't know exactly where the discussion will take us. We never do, but we hope it will leave every listener with a renewed sense of perspective and possibility to carry them forward long after the conversation ends. And so I am so happy right now to bring in my good friends, Andre and Chandra. And it's good to see you guys both. We do truly know. I always say, guys, that if we could just record when we get on a call a couple weeks in advance of this to say, what do we want to talk about this year? We could just roll that and be done. And totally. And it might echo that. It might be something different. Ladies first, Chandra, how are you?
To be here with both of you.
Well, I certainly hope so. I mean, I know you're always happy to get a chance to see Andre. Maybe me too. Andre, how are you?
I'm good. It's so good to be back. I missed you guys.
Miss you guys too. And, you and I are doing our thing. Chandra's the one that's working really hard every single day and knee deep and busy in the Corey C. Griffin Foundation, which is making a massive impact. And we'll talk about that before we get out of here. But it is always interesting because every year we get on, and I think we figured this out, like, we're not going to do the same message every single month. It's Black History Month. This is what you need to do. This is the, we could do that every single year. And I'm not saying it's not important, because it is. But I think, to me, this conversation is always so beautiful because it kind of goes in whatever direction it does. And then the perspective is one of different backgrounds and different roles in life. And in both of your cases, roles of two people that have had incredible careers and more to come, that have overcome some of the adversity that comes with being a person of color, and my background obviously being totally different. But the word that kept coming up, Chandra, in our conversation was alignment, which I love because that's kind of where I'm at right now too. What does the word alignment mean to you right now?
When you say alignment, the first thing that comes to mind is values. And so I think, and then next is being in sync with those values. So right now, alignment is this in sync with my values?
I love that. How about for you, Andre?
Yeah, I think it's a lot of the same, right? I think it's about, if you are purpose driven, is what you're doing getting you closer to that goal, right? Of purpose, impact, legacy, all the things, right? And if it's not, I think the question then becomes, how do you become, it's not even courageous, right? How do you pull back and go, how do I find something that I align with? Because this is really not it. And if we're honest, we're having those conversations in our head right now about, is this the role or is this the career that aligns with what I'm trying to do with my life?
When I think about all that too, Chandra, we've talked about it before. As someone that lived in Kansas City for a number of years, as someone that took a bold leap of faith moving to Boston and felt really like a fish out of water for a number of years in a community that traditionally has been known to have struggled with racial issues. And by the way, most cities do, but there's certainly a lot of history there in Boston. Yet you took that leap of faith. It involved working in this world where oftentimes you were only the only person of color. You've had to work hard, not just like everybody else has to work hard, but you've had to work hard even more so to, and this is oftentimes the plight of an African-American woman that has to prove herself and climb an even steeper hill because of the color of her skin and her gender. And oh, by the way, I've moved to an area that, look, Atlanta might have been a little bit easier or somewhere like that, or DC, than Boston. And so when you talk about alignment, it could be hard, I would think, to do that when you still have to prove your title. Not to you, but to everybody else. That's not right, but that's the way it is. Or maybe it's internally in your head that I've got to prove myself. I feel like you've proven yourself. Shouldn't have had to, but I feel like you've proven yourself. And I wonder how much that has then led to the ability to focus on alignment.
So first of all, I want to say thank you because I've been taking the time to reflect on my career. And there were times where I felt like I had to walk in a room and rattle off my entire resume. And thankfully, in time, you come to a place of maturity and being confident enough in who you are, where you realize that you don't have to prove yourself to anyone. However, that doesn't stop people who test you, right? And I realize every day I'm tested in some capacity. And so I really have to focus on my internal dialogue of being my own coach and my own champion. And I'll share really quickly that I am a part of this amazing fellowship called the Black Leadership. It's called the Black Leadership Institute. It's through the Institute of Nonprofit Practice, and it's a fellowship for Black executives in nonprofit. And I had a once in a lifetime opportunity 2 weeks ago to take a pilgrimage through Montgomery, Alabama, which is all about learning about civil rights. And the one thing I can say to you, Joel and Andre, is I came back and realized that the pain and suffering that I've endured as a Black woman is not just intergenerational. It is inherent, like generations of generations, that all we know as Black women is pain and suffering. And so I think the biggest area for me to focus on now is how much am I taking on? How much am I putting myself in difficult situations where I have to prove myself, or I'm with people who are never going to honor or respect who I am? And then how much of it is, it's just the way society is, and it's a challenge that I'm going to go through. But I guess what I'm saying is I'm at the place where I don't have to put myself in difficult situations that hinder me if I don't have to, if that makes sense. I hope that makes sense. But it's like learning your worth enough to know that I don't have to go out and look for pain. I have to go out and seek pain. I don't have to go out and seek problems and try to solve it. That's one part of my life versus what I'm called to do as a leader on behalf of kids of color primarily. I'm an advocate of all kids, but that work that has to be done, yes, we know that there will be challenges and adversity, but I'd rather focus on that than pain that I'm bringing on myself.
I have a follow-up, and I know Andre will have a million thoughts on this as well. I just want to get my follow-up in, but because by the time Andre shares his insight on it, I'm going to forget where I was at. But I just always like to use this as a reference point. And you heard me say it already. It's climbing the mountain, or we'll use a treadmill as an example. For those that don't understand what it means to have privilege, that doesn't mean that you have more money per se. I view it as, because of the way I grew up and the color of my skin, yes, no one, even someone that's wealthy, by the way, because, oh, by the way, there's mental health. Oh, by the way, you have a sick parent or a child or whatever it is. Like I always say this, everybody has something. All right. But for someone like me, at least the way things started, that treadmill, maybe elevation was on 1 or 2 or 3. maybe for some it starts at 1, maybe it starts at 4. And life can get more difficult and it can go up to 5 or 6 with an elevation. The point is that oftentimes in this country, a person of color might be starting that treadmill on an incline of 6 or 7 or 8. That's the starting point. And if it's a woman, same thing. If it's a Black woman, that treadmill incline might start at 10 or 12. And so it feels to me, Chandra, like with all the climbing you've done, with all of the muscle memory that comes from it, which includes all the microaggressions, includes everything that you're dealing with every single day, that you have learned how to fight it. Not just prove yourself to others, but prove yourself to you that you're enough. And so instead of that treadmill being set as it's been for much of your life at an 8 or a 10 or a 12 or whatever it is, that maybe now it's at a 2 or a 3, and you could trust yourself a little bit. Am I reading that correctly?
Yes, you are. You absolutely are.
That's so much work. And I know that so many people in your shoes would say, well, it's not what we signed up for, but that's just the way it's always been. What kind of a relief is it? And then I'll let Andre jump in with all thoughts. I'm not even going to ask you anything, just go. What does it feel? What must it feel like to not have to climb quite as much anymore, yet still have your guard up?
It's exhausting, honestly, because when you talk about pouring yourself into whatever you're focused on and then you achieve this goal, there is a level of exhaustion that you go through, right? I don't know that I'm relieved per se. I honestly think I'm actually processing why I had to go through so much hell that I had to go through. But I can tell you that the power of learning your history and where you come from is that I realized that even those obstacles that I overcame does not compare to what my ancestors had to go through for me to get here. And in a sense, it's encouraging that I have the opportunity to be exhausted because I have put in so much work to bring about change.
Yeah, there's so much there, right? I mean, that could be a 3-hour show if we continue to talk about this subject. What it makes me think about, and what I often think about, is, pressure is a privilege, right? And the expectation when you're in an executive role is magnified 5x, right? Versus someone who's non-Black, right? It's just the expectation of being in that room because you are the unique person in the room, typically, whether you're Black or you're a female or you're Hispanic or you're Asian. You are a unique individual that they have to look at in the room talking about leadership and what we're going to do. And there's always this question. So, for me, what I think about is a lot of what Chandra talked about too, which is you think about our ancestry, if we're talking about Black or brown folks, right? What we've had to overcome and what we're still overcoming, because if we're being honest and we're having a real honest conversation, we can't not bypass what's happening in this country. And so when you take what Chandra just went through, and then you compare that to where we are in this country, it does feel like we've stepped way back. And there are still some feelings in this country about where people of color should be, where their roles should be, where they shouldn't be, where they shouldn't have access to it. And when I think about privilege, I think like this. There are people who have privilege that use it to uplift people who didn't start out that way. And I think you do that really well, Joel, too. And I think David Oliver, God rest his soul, who passed away last year, did the same thing. David would often say, I was born on third base. So the acknowledgement of the privilege, but then doing the work to help those who don't have the privilege, persevering, have success. You can still be a privileged human being, but also acknowledge that others aren't. And then how do you impact that? And I think that's, where I'd like to see more people taking that on is instead of defending their privilege, because people do often say with privilege, but I've worked hard. And they really have missed the point of privilege, right? And so we don't have that. Chandra and I we're not afforded that opportunity. So what we have to do is allow our work, our education, and our experience and our past success prove to them that we can do the work that we're being asked to do. And is it fair? Probably not, but it is what it is. It is what it is, and we have to just overcome that. And I think going to something like what you went through, Chandra, when I hear it, I am so glad to be Black in America because we are some of the most resilient people that have ever existed on this planet based on what we've had to go through as a people and what we're still yet going through as a people. And so for me, it gives me great encouragement to think that way. But it also, to me, as you climb, you just can't climb the ladder. You got to bring other people with you. I just think for me, and I know Chandra and Joel, you're the same way, right? We don't want to go have all this success and then go, hey, I'm up here. When are you coming? We don't do that, right? We've got a hand extended down the ladder saying, hey, let me help you get up here. And I wish we had more of that, especially in the Black culture. I wish we had more people who, when someone of color wins, they wouldn't look at themselves and say, well, why are they winning and I'm not? What is it about me that I'm not winning too? I wish we would have people that would say, I'm so glad Chandra's in the Black Leadership Institute. That's an amazing thing. I'm going to root her on. And it says nothing about what I haven't accomplished, right? So we've got some work to do there. And if we're real honest, we have a lot of work to do there. And so what I try to do and continue to try to do, and I'll end with this point, anyone of color or anyone that's not of color, and if I'm connected to you and you're winning, Andre's sitting back clapping. I'm celebrating you because I get joy out of the people that are thriving and I'm wanting to know what they're doing and all that. And I just think we've got to have an abundance mindset, which I know we'll probably talk about at some point, but I wish we had more of an abundance mindset.
Well, let's go there. Let's go there with abundance mindset, because it was all over my notes from when we all met. It was just interesting because so much of what we were all talking about, all coming from different angles, all kind of came to the same place, right? Which is so interesting. First off, it's a reminder that we all have different stories, but there's alignment, I know, between the three of us in our values. Chandra, you talked about values before. By the way, there's no one that I like to see more than Chandra when I go to Boston every year, and she knows that. And one day I'm even going to get her to a baseball game, but she's a busy woman, you know. But I didn't figure it out. I started to understand abundance mindset and the mental side of things. It applies to all of this, but I figured it out in the last year with a lot of help from a lot of different people, coaches, meditation, therapy, all of it. And we are born, no matter what the color of our skin, we are born to live out of scarcity. The moment that we come into this world, we need help.
That's right.
Right? We need mom to feed us or take care of us and change the diapers and all these things, right? And so as we become adults, we're still always, we sabotage ourselves. And the question I keep asking myself as I try to make myself more uncomfortable, I'm talking a lot in my business and trying to push myself to not keep doing the same thing over and over again, because the same thing's pretty good, but I'd like for it to be better. And to not have to just do the same thing over and over again when I feel like there's more there, is to get uncomfortable. But our brains are wired to take us back to what we know, which is failure or worst case scenario, or we go back to what's familiar to us instead of allowing ourselves to take that chance. It feels to me like, Chandra, in all these recent years, you have taken those chances. You have fought that fear. You have fought that lack of comfort and said, I'm going to do it anyway. And I know that that's a really hard thing to do. But what I keep telling myself, just on a lot of advice, is asking yourself this question. What's the worst thing that could happen here? That's the first thing. And if the answer is, I can handle that, it's usually then, I've been here before. And it's allowed my brain to stop settling and saying, yeah, I could do this. What does that mean to you, Chandra, with an abundance mindset?
So an abundance mindset to me means that you operate from a space of knowing that there's more than enough for everyone. I love what you talked about, that we're born in with a scarcity mindset, right? Just as humans. And then you put on top of, race, social economic status, gender, all of those things that I think can chip away at what we already don't have. But you know what? We talked about this, Joel, me, you, and Andre, and you and I talked about working with coaches. And I had an incredible coaching session yesterday where she basically called me out and was like, your issues are with your worth. She's like, your issues are with your worth. And so the reason why I share that is that when we really break it down, the reason why we operate out of scarcity is because we don't know our worth. It takes a level of being rooted and grounded. And that's really a daily practice that when you see someone else win, you can still cheer for them. And I'll be honest with you, there are days where I'm like, oh my God, I'm so excited. But if I'm in a space where I'm struggling or I'm not rooted and grounded or I'm not pouring into myself, I will feel slighted. Like, let's be real. I don't always operate from a place of abundance. And so but the root cause of that is my worth. And again, going back to my earlier statement, as a Black woman, I am having to do a lot of work around my worth. Things that were inherited, things that were not inherited, present circumstances, external factors, internal factors. And I can tell you that the work around my worth, leading to believing that there's more than enough for me, is probably some of the most difficult work I've ever done.
But when you limit your value, you limit your worth, or when you limit your worth, you limit your opportunity. That's the abundance mindset. It's not, I have enough, I'm good, I'm done. It's, I have enough. I can go do whatever I want. I'm going to be okay one way or another, right? It is a freeing thing to say, whatever the monster is in the room for you, I can face this because I got enough already. You're not going to scare me away. I could go do this. And the growth that I've seen from you in years is one that I think you could have done it before. You weren't going to allow yourself to do it before. That's just my take. Andre?
That's deep.
Yeah. So a couple thoughts.
She made a face like, that is deep. I'm like, I don't know what's happened to me, but it must be all the meditation. But it is like, it's just a different way of seeing things. And it's like, and we don't see it in ourselves. Why? Here's the question I keep asking. This pertains to all of it. And then Andre, either pick up on this or go wherever you want to go. We all do this, by the way. People say, well, do you have imposter syndrome? Everybody's got at least some version of it. So why is it, this is the question I keep asking myself. Why is it that so often the voice inside our heads is different than the voice that everybody else has? Mm-hmm. Is it possible that they're not all lying? Sometimes you say, oh, they're just trying to make me feel good. Oh, they're just trying to say the right things. Well, I don't know that everybody's that full of it. Yeah, sure, there's some show and there's some this and there's some that, but is it possible that our voice is the one lying to us and everybody else is actually telling us what we need to know?
When I think about that, Joe, I think we always sabotage ourselves, right? There's an old saying, if you could hear how people talked about you when you weren't in the room, you wouldn't talk about yourself the same way. And we sabotage ourselves all the time in thinking, based on imposter syndrome, that we shouldn't have this. Why do they pick me? I'm not worthy of this. But in your head, you get into your head that way. Outside of your head, there are people saying, I wanted Chandra or I wanted Joel because they are so good at X. And then you get the X and you're like, oh my God, why do they want me? And you start questioning that. And I think the difference between imposter syndrome is sometimes when I get opportunities, I'll go, I wonder why they want me. I hope I don't mess this up. And I go, they wanted me because I'm really good at what I do. That's why they wanted me. And I pivot really quick. I don't stay in that imposter syndrome, but we all have a taste of it. The other thing I'm thinking about too, as we talk about this, there's a thing I saw recently that said that when you know your worth, the minute you know your worth and you walk into the room shifts. And it's so true, right? And so when we walk in rooms, and if you are really authentic and you know what your value is, you don't worry about anything. But I think when I think about the abundance conversation, I think there are people who operate with scarcity. Because I was so frustrated with this scarcity mindset that I kept encountering. that I talked to a local psychologist, and Kevin, he runs a podcast called Toxic Leadership, and I can't think of this. He's a local guy, but he does a lot of work cross country. And I wanted to get his feedback, and I got some feedback. So I ended up reading Scarcity Brain, which is a book about scarcity and what you just talked about, Joel, that we're born with scarcity. I think when we think about abundance, I think those that have the scarcity mindset think, but if I also include Joel or Chandra into what I'm getting, what am I not getting? And that's not an abundant mindset. An abundant mindset is simply, if Joel doesn't have a cup of coffee, I have a cup of coffee. I will give Joel some of my coffee so we can both have coffee. That's the abundant mindset. I'm not missing anything because I still have coffee. And sometimes you get in rooms, especially if it's not diverse, and you'll see someone that is diverse in the room, and they will sometimes avoid you. And it's just a weird thing, right? And so for me, and the way I operate, I'm an abundant thinker. I think anything that is supposed to be mine, and I lean in my faith with that, anything that's designed to be mine will be mine, right? And so I'm not worried about what I'm not getting, because I'm going to get everything I'm entitled to have in this lifetime. And for me, I am juiced when I can bring other people into the room. In fact, sometimes I take on nonprofit board duties, because when I get into those rooms, it's not diverse. And my whole focus is, one, help the organization. Two, how do I bring other diverse people into the room before I exit this space? And again, that is very fulfilling for me. And my mind is wired that way, to be an abundant thinker. And there's so many benefits from that, because if you're around the right people, they are the same people that will talk about you in rooms you don't even exist in, because of what you just did. And the way that we're built is, if someone's doing that, we're trying to figure out, why would Chandra bring my name up in a room I don't exist? I've got to figure out how to pay her back. So my mind's already working, like, how do I pay her back? Other thing I wrote down really quick, comfort, right? So comfort and growth don't make any sense. You can't be comfortable and grow. It just doesn't work, right? And so the only way to have growth in anything you do is to really get uncomfortable. But you lean into that, because that's where the growth is. I just had this conversation just this week with and I won't name her. I had just met her, and I could just sense that there was some troubles with her. And she sort of told me, she goes, I just don't think I matter. And I went right into this mode that I go into, which is, of course you matter. Of course you matter. You have to believe you matter, right? And that's a real thing. I was listening to something today. This lady wrote a book called Mattering, which I'm going to read this book. There's some kind of an epidemic happening, like the loneliness epidemic, where younger professionals don't feel like they matter. And it's akin to the loneliness epidemic, right? Which is based around no connectivity. I'm not engaging. Technology has something to do with that. But there's a real big sort of an uproar with people feeling like they just don't matter. So what they do is they withdraw. And, we're going to have to figure out a way how to help those people overcome that. But it's also through abundance that you can do that, right? And so I offered to help her and coach her and do whatever I could to help her, to help her understand that she does matter. And when you walk in that, right? Like, I know I matter. I know what I do has impact, right? I know that I'm valuable. I know all the things. That's not arrogance, by the way. It's just that I know I've helped a lot of people. I've made an impact in my career. And so with that, what I'm trying to do is help others achieve some of the same things.
Well said. And look, there's still something, no matter where you go in the world, when you lift up others, and you make people better, you make your community better, you make your teams better, it feels pretty good. It feels pretty good to pull people up and not push them down. And especially nowadays, talk about the loneliness epidemic, which really has grown, and I think it's going to continue to grow post-pandemic. And then in this world of automation, where, I tell kids all the time, if you could just figure out how to look someone in the eye and meet face to face. I'm not the old dude that's like, we have to meet face to face every single time. But if you have just a little bit of that skill, you're already going to be ahead of everyone else. The world changes. The world's going to change. Yet, at times, guys, it feels like we're going backwards. Oh, by the way, we've always had that feeling. I say that not having walked into your shoes. I say that as, a student of history, as all of us should be. When I look at what just went down in Minneapolis, and I realize that as you guys and I are recording this, we usually record a few weeks out. I don't know what's going to happen in the next few weeks. As we're recording this in late January, a week ago, I would have told you that everything was going to completely blow up. And today it feels a little calmer, at least until I go and check the news after we get off of here. I don't know. All I know is that this country, and not just this country, around the world, is so divided right now. This is a whole different discussion. I don't want to go deep into it. It's a media product. And I don't say that the way people think, because I'm the media.
Right.
By the way, we're all the media now. That's part of the problem. Not that people shouldn't be in it, that the lines have been blurred so much that nobody knows what's real and what's not. And AI has made things more complicated. And big tech has been built and funded to divide us. And so the politicians understand that if they could use big tech to divide us, we're going to keep coming back for more. We can't help ourselves. And big tech understands that there's a lot of money to be made there. So we're going to go satisfy whatever politician that allows us to do that. But what happened in Minneapolis, at least for me, on the very outside of it, brought me back to some of the memories that I had as a white man in 2020 or 2000. When was George Floyd? 20, right?
Yeah.
There's a lot that went on that year.
Mm-hmm.
And I was just curious. I know I'm getting off topic, and I don't really delve into a lot of politics on here, although I just always feel like it's a safe space with you guys. And if people like it, great. I hope they'll at least listen. But I just wondered, if the two people that were tragically shot, unnecessarily shot, you could debate, I don't think you should be there or not. But if you don't think they should be there, then you don't believe in free speech. If you don't think they should be carrying a gun, then you don't believe in the Second Amendment. If those are your stances, then we could have that discussion. I just sat there and wondered, if they weren't both white, what does that look like? I mean, if it was an immigrant, it would have been written off as, well, we're all immigrants, by the way. But, if it was an illegal immigrant, then there would have been a fair discussion of whether they should have been in this country or not. I would still argue you shouldn't get shot for that. If it was a black man or a black woman, they would have been, some of the narrative would have been, well, they were getting into trouble. They shouldn't have been there, and that type of thing, instead of just looking at the humanity of it. And so I guess my question is, where I'll start with you, Andre. Where are we at with the humanity piece right now? Because it does feel oftentimes like we're going backwards. You want to disagree on what should have happened or not, fine, but let's all agree that nobody should be shot in the street unless they're pulling a gun on someone. I don't know.
Yeah, when you said that, Joe, that's one of the things I've been thinking about a lot since the Minneapolis thing is the humanity piece, right? It's interesting that you said if the two people were not white and they were sort of black, brown, Asian, whatever, what would have been the outpour? One of the victims we haven't talked about is Keith Porter, who was black, that was shot by ICE, by an off-duty ICE officer, right? He's black. You haven't heard his name very much, right? And so
that's kind of my point, right?
That's the point, right? Is that we're kind of society in America, and I'll just talk about America because America really is venturing into a third world type country with everything going on. And this is not a political stance. This is just a reality stance. And so what I think about that is we're sort of conditioned that if you're brown or black and you're shot by police, you must have done something wrong. You must have been doing something wrong. Here we have two white people that got shot, murdered, right? You could almost call it an execution, if you will, when you get shot 10 times. The latest shooting was 10 times and you get shot in the face. I don't know that's protecting, and that's not law enforcement to me. But I do think too that I'm glad that Minneapolis, that you see the majority of the people that are protesting are white, and that's a beautiful thing, right? And so I think our country has never, ever recognized, or reckoned with rather, what this country was built on, which was slavery and the remnants of what that has done to our country. And you see that with some of the whitewashing going on. Again, not political. That's just fact. We have ideology that we believe that there is a superior race, and that's coming back. That's starting to come back around. And you see it in the behavior. So if we take politics out of it and we just look at the behavior, what does the behavior indicate? To me, as I receive it, I start to think that this country's trying to become the white dominant race again, right? And we saw that with slavery and lynchings and all the things. And so when Black people and brown people see what's happening in Minnesota, what we say is, oh, but we've been here before. We know what that's like. We know exactly what that is. Is it right? No, it's not right. Is it wrong? It's everything about it is wrong, right? And so I think there's such a lack of humanity. That's why you see things like that happening. Because if we had humanity, there would have been a better way to interact with the protesters, which, by the way, is an constitutional right to do in this city. And they're being very peaceful. They're reacting to how they're being treated, which anybody would. If you kick a dog 9 times and he bites you the 10th time, well, he should have bitten you the 10th time because the way you treated him, right? And so I think we really have to ask ourselves, where's the humanity? Even if that person had committed a crime, does the crime and then the justice of it being shot 10 times equal up? And oftentimes, if you were real and you weren't a keyboard warrior, you would say, that's just wrong, man. That is no way to treat a human being. And that's where I think we are in this country. We just don't have any empathy, sympathy, humanity for our fellow citizens. And I don't know what's going to change that. Someone has to go. I don't care about power. I don't care about money. That's just flat out wrong. And I'm going to be vocal about it. I'm willing to risk my career to be vocal about the things I care about. And I'm just wondering, where's the other people that see this happening, that are in charge, that are being quiet? Because if you're quiet, you're really complicit.
Because, the politics side of it, I get that there are 2 sides to the abortion argument. And usually it's more close to the middle than the far extremes, but politics is going to push everybody to, you have to pick one extreme side, making all the middle gray. And it's like, wait a minute, what about everybody that lives in the middle? But you got to pick a side. Same thing with guns, on and on and on. Same thing maybe with Israel or whatever it is. And so we go to these far extremes. And to me, the middle part, this is just my take on it, Chandra, the middle part is the humanity. Like, I mean, if we just see each other as people and, hey, we can, and for a long time, I felt like I just don't want to talk to anybody about it because I'd rather just be friends. But, maybe we do need to talk about it because the less we talk about it, the more we go into our own echo chambers with our own algorithms, which have been built for us. And this is the only way. And the humanity piece to me, which you both do so beautifully, and I hope I do as well, is learning about other people and understanding that they are people. And I've said this many times, you guys have heard it, that the 9 years that I lived in St. Louis were in many ways the most informative years of my life because the first 6 I was there, I covered a lot of high school sports. That meant that in a city like many other cities where you have your pocket and this is where you belong, St. Louis can be pretty segregated too. I was in a high school out in a rural area one day, in a high school in the $1 million neighborhoods one day, and going through the metal detectors the next. And kids are kids and people are people. And people would say, you went to East St. Louis? Was it safe? And I'm like, I was fine. Mm-hmm. Were there drug deals going on down the street or some stuff going on? Maybe. Everybody left me alone. I was there to work on a story. I was sitting with a mom on her front porch as her son was getting ready to go to the NBA, and it was a beautiful conversation. And you know what? You get to know people. And so when Ferguson happened, it wasn't some foreign place for me or even people in St. Louis. It was, I've been in that neighborhood before. Great people and bad people too, just like anywhere else, by the way. So Chandra, a 2-part question here, and then we'll start to wrap it up. First is just your take on the humanity piece, because you have climbed the ranks doing what you're doing and earning the respect that you deserved all along by pushing aside all of the noise and all the hurdles and everything that you have had to climb by diving into the humanity piece and the connection. So I want to know what that piece has meant to you. And then the follow-up is just going to be about going down to Alabama. But let's start with the humanity piece.
So, Joel, you and Andre and I have talked about this before. We know that the humanity piece is important. We know that at the core, we should all be kind to one another and treat each other with dignity and respect because we're human, right? That's humanity. However, everyone is not built that way. And one of the things I've also learned is that you cannot change how people function, right? So you, as a white Jewish man, using this platform for the greater good is because your heart wants to, because you are a heart-centered person. Everyone is not a heart-centered person. And I believe I said this last year when we came together. We have got to stop being distracted by the foolishness. Mm. We are stronger when we can bring like-minded people together to reinforce change and to transform, right, the world, society. You cannot do that with people that are not aligned, that are not in sync with you. And I think that what we're getting distracted with right now is we're spending so much time on he shouldn't have shot, but he wanted to shoot that person. And they want to be filled with hate. And they want to divide people, right? And we're spending all this time questioning why are they that way? Why won't they change? Versus bringing together the people and the voices that will be the loudest in the room, right? So the humanity piece, I think, is understanding, going back to everything that we said, if your values do not align with people, treating people with kindness, in dignity and respect, you are going to cause chaos. It just is what it is. And so I think that's one of the things I've had to learn. And I'm almost 50, right? And I really believe that wisdom comes with age, because I know a trauma response for me was always trying to take people who have the worst behavior and make them see the light.
Yeah.
Right? If you don't want to make that choice, and Andre, you always say, Andre, you choose to be a person who lifts other people up. Joel, you choose to be that person. There are people who are not going to choose that. And we have got to stop focusing on those people.
Yeah. Yeah.
The second part to that, and we'll start to wrap it up with this. You know, the guest that I had on the week before this airs is Sean Edwards. It's opening up Black Movie Hall of Fame, 18th and Vine area in Kansas City, and phenomenal movie critic. It was fun to talk movies with him, but it blew me away. It shouldn't have. I know more of the history of baseball than I do movies because of my job and being on the board at the Negro Leagues Baseball Museum. And as he was talking about the history of Black actors and Black directors, and started talking about how they, have to rent out their own theater or maybe rent it out at a midnight time because that's all they were allowed to do it. So much of it echoed the same history of the Negro Leagues, that just as good, if not better, than their white counterparts, and said, you know what, we'll go do it ourselves. And it was such a deep conversation, and a fun one, by the way, too. But it got me thinking as you were talking about the trip that you took, Chandra, and I'm just wondering, in this world where it feels like we're going backwards for a lot of us, but I'll echo what I said before. I think that every step in the history of this country, we've always felt like we're going backwards to some extent, or every moment we think we finally made it, we do take steps backwards. And I guess nothing's supposed to be easy, right? It's supposed to be uncomfortable. It'd be great if we could just figure this all out. But Chandra, you just made many really important points as to why not everyone's going to figure it out. What did that trip do for you as you reckon what's going on in the world, and then seeing and maybe going back in time a little bit to what things were like there? What did you learn? What moved you on that trip to Alabama?
So if I were to say there were 3 areas where I was moved, one was seeing the amount of white people going on this pilgrimage, more whites than blacks, right? And so again, I think that we're told certain things through the media to make us believe that we're going backwards. But I saw people who really were touched and really passionate and really believing in the importance of being educated. So that was one. Knowledge is power, which we all know. Two, it called me on the carpet regarding how I treat other Black people. Because when Andre talked about, you know, in our culture, how we wish we had more people uplifting people, it made me understand the root of the brokenness, because it was done to us. So we've only been acting out of what was done to us, right? And so it called me on the carpet of coming from a place of more empathy and compassion and releasing judgment and releasing a sense of feeling ashamed. Why am I feeling ashamed if a Black person gets arrested? Or why am I feeling ashamed of that? You know, so it really called me on the carpet. Why am I feeling ashamed? I should be honored to be a Black woman in this world. And third, it really helped me understand my responsibility as a Black woman and how I treat myself and how I treat my daughter and how I treat others and the work that I am called to do for kids. Because going back to this idea of worth, I am no less than anyone else. Andre, you are no less. Joel, you are no less. None of us are less than anyone else. We all have the power to be change agents. And if anything, it made me more passionate about the work that I have to do for kids, because I have access to resources that really can be life-changing for some people.
Beautifully said. I knew you'd have a lot of great insight there, and I'm happy you were able to take that trip, because I suspect that'll be one that lives with you forever. Andre, how about a final thought from you?
Yeah, so I think for me, when I love what Chandra said, right, which is we certainly have to know our value and our worth. But the other thing I think we have to do too is, and if we care about this, I think what we have to do, how do we be an example for how you move through the corporate structure, being the most authentic, unapologetically you that you can be? Because I think a lot of it, if we really be honest, there are some people that move through corporate and they come home and they're exhausted because they've had to act in that role. And so you see Chandra, how this is who she is, right? The other thing it made me think about, and so what I'm saying is, try to be an example for how you show up in rooms that oftentimes you're not invited in, so that it triggers somebody else that looks like you to want to say, how did you do that? How can I act that way? The other thing it triggered for me too, and if you haven't watched this, you should. Sidney Poitier, they did a documentary on him. And one of the things that stuck out, I just admire him so much, because when you're talking about Sean Edwards, that came up in my head. And one of the things he said is, this is before he had any success coming from the Bahamas. He said, I didn't know I was Black until I got to America. I never heard the N word in the Bahamas. Everyone in the Bahamas, when he was there, did well. It was only until he came here that he knew he was Black, but the way he was treated. The other thing he said is, and I think this goes to your character, or our collective character, he was offered jobs that would have showcased Black people in a very different kind of way, a negative way. And he hadn't made it yet. And he didn't accept any of those jobs. He continued to wash dishes until he got the role that showed Black people as the kings they were. And I just found, what are our non-negotiables when we get a promotion or we get access to something? You know, are we shucking and jiving? Or are we really saying that is not something that I'm going to be able to do because it's either not a right fit, whatever? So I think it comes back to me that it's always a character move, and it's always an integrity-based move. And that it goes along with the alignment piece. For me, I'm not driven by money, but I'm driven by impact. And I've just discovered through the impact, the money shows up. And I think if we could have more people that are operating that way and not trying to capture the limelight, just do the work, impact other people, help other people, and everything else takes care of itself. That's the life that I'm trying to lead and am living, and I want to continue to do that work. because that all speaks to the legacy thing that I'm focused on, which is how do we build some legacy so that if I'm no longer here, the way that I'm talking about Sidney Poitier is to how someone might talk about.
That's the abundance mindset, by the way. I mean, that's it. I'm not worried about the money. I got enough. I'll be fine. Whatever it is, I'll be fine. Let me go do what matters. And you free yourself to do that instead of limiting yourself. That's the abundance mindset right there.
Yeah.
I think. You guys, amazing as always. We'll do it again next year. I mean, I can't imagine we won't. So the invite is already there. I don't need to tell you guys that. We'll just pick it up where we left off, or see what else is going on in the world, and we'll keep chipping away at this thing. And I don't want to go any longer. I mean, I do, but Chandra's busy raising millions of dollars, so we gotta let her go do her thing for the Corey C. Griffin Foundation.
You know, another thing before Chandra jumps in, one thing I want to say to you, Joel, is you are an incredible ally in this movement that we are still in. And we didn't have to beg you to have this show. You reached out to us, said, let's continue, right? We need more people to do that, right? So I love that you're so curious. You want to continue the conversation. All these are sometimes hard conversations to have. I think we make it pretty easy because of our relationship with each other. And they don't have to be hard conversations, right? This is a historical moment that we're in. And this is the history. And what we're saying, there are still boundaries that exist. And you're willing to have this discussion. So, I really appreciate you. And it's always, good for us three to get together, because there is an energy about us that these conversations just seem natural, honest, and easy. So thank you for that.
Well, I'll just say this, Chandra, I'll give you the final word, but that I feel like we always end this way, and it's always a little bit uncomfortable because, as you both know, I'm not doing this for the attention. And there are many, many more people with the same color of skin that I have that are doing a lot more than I'm doing. All I would say to that, and I'm not trying to downplay it, is if it gets people thinking, then us collectively are doing a job. If my being able to do it as someone that is white catches someone that maybe looks or thinks that they can relate to me better, and that opens their eye, or at least encourages them to have a conversation, then it's working and it's doing its job. I don't know whose dog doesn't like me right now.
That was my dog. That's going crazy.
Was it something I said? Could have been mine, by the way, as well. Mine seemed to be quiet right now.
You said you were a white Jew. He doesn't like Jewish people, so that's why he barked. So
I was just saying, like, one of my dogs, when we have a black friend that would come over, I feel like would always bark more at that person. I'm like, are you a racist dog? What's going on here?
He might be.
All jokes aside, might be. You don't know. I think that if these conversations, Chandra, just encourage all of us, not just white people, we are most comfortable around the people that have similar backgrounds to us and go through similar things to us. I think I've said it before. There's a reason why, if you look at a locker room in all sports, certainly in baseball, any of the black players, there aren't as many of them anymore, are usually together. Why? Because they can relate. They have similar type of stories. They deal with similar microaggressions, on and on and on. And that could be anything. These guys love country music. These guys like this. These guys like that. So there's a reason why we go to our comfort zones. The challenge, and it shouldn't be that much of a challenge, is to get out of that comfort zone and have these conversations. It's the humanity piece we talked about. And so to me, Chandra, if there's anything that I want people to look at, if they're going to say, hey, good job, Joel, or not, is go out there and have the conversations that Andre, Chandra, and I are having right now. And you don't need to solve the world's problems, because you're not going to, but you're going to be better for it if you have them. Chandra, I'll give you the final word.
Final word from me. First of all, thank you for giving me the final word. Is I would encourage everyone to take a look at what they can do, right? What action can they take? Even if that action is maybe taking a step back and really evaluating situations and looking at the role that they play in certain situations. But I encourage everyone to take a step back and look at what role they can play. How can they be change agents, and whether or not they want to be, right? So I would say have a real conversation with yourself. And then I just want to really quickly echo what Andre said, Joel, about how much we appreciate you. And we also noticed that you think you're cute. these days. So I just want to.
I never said that.
Yeah, he's
No,
all
I
fit now.
had a full conversation about how you think you're cute. We love
I
that
do
for
not.
you. So I just want
Andre's
to
the good looking. Andre's the good looking dude.
not
I've
cut.
never heard you say anything about the way I look. It's always Andre. I'm gonna cut you off right now.
Too funny.
It's my show. We don't need to. We don't need to talk about that. I don't think I'm anything like that. But if you think so, that's fine. All right, you guys are the best. And as I say every single year, grateful for this conversation. Grateful for the friendship. Check out the work that Chandra's doing at the Corey C. Griffin Foundation. Easy to find online. We'll have the link in the show notes as well because she's doing really, really important work. And guys, you did great work as always here today. We'll do it again next year. No, round of the bases questions, no baseball themed questions. We've covered all that before. I would say that the small ball question, we're doing all the small ball right now, just the little things that you can do to make the world at least a little bit better every single day. Andre Davis, Chandra Clark, appreciate you guys both, and we'll do it again.
Our pleasure. Good to see you guys.
It's around the bases. Everybody knows Joe Goldberg.